Captain Lily Martinez stood in the crowded market of Valendra Prime, wiping sweat from her forehead and wondering why she had agreed to land on a forest moon during its hottest season, when her cargo runner, the Wandering Star, desperately needed parts that apparently only grew on trees or were handcrafted by elves who treated technology like it was some kind of living creature that needed respect and proper introductions before it would work correctly. The market was unlike anything Lily had seen in her 10 years of hauling cargo across the outer colonies, because instead of the usual prefab structures and holographic displays, everything here was built from living wood that curved and twisted into shops and stalls, while bioluminescent vines provided lighting that shifted from blue to green, depending on the time of day. Lily had been told that the elven inhabitants of Valendra Prime were friendly to human traders, as long as those traders showed proper respect for the forests, and didn't ask too many questions about how exactly their technology worked or why their starship engines seemed to run on something that looked suspiciously like tree sap mixed with crystallized moonlight. She was haggling with a vendor over the price of a navigation relay when she noticed the elf woman watching her from a nearby stall, where dozens of beautiful eggs were displayed on beds of soft moss, each one glowing faintly with internal light that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. The elf woman had silver hair that fell past her waist, woven with small living flowers that bloomed and closed as Lily watched, and her eyes were the kind of green that made you think of deep forests and ancient secrets and things that humans probably were not supposed to understand but wanted to. Anyway, Lily tried to focus on her negotiation, but kept glancing back at the egg stall because there was something hypnotic about those softly glowing spheres, and the way the elf woman smiled at her, like she knew a joke that Lily had not heard yet, but would find hilarious once she figured it out. When Lily finally completed her purchase and turned to leave, the elf woman called out to her in perfectly accented human common, asking if she would like to see something special, something rare, something that most traders never got the chance to witness. Lily knew that getting involved in local customs on an alien world was usually a bad idea, especially when you were on a tight schedule and your ship was held together mostly by replacement parts and hope. But something about the elf woman's voice made her walk over to the egg stall anyway. The elf woman introduced herself as Kira and explained that the eggs were dragon eggs, though these were not the massive fire-breathing monsters from human fairy tales, but rather the small companion dragons that bonded with individuals and grew in size and ability based on the strength of that bond. Lily laughed and said she barely had enough room in her ship for herself and her supplies, let alone a dragon, even a small one. But Kira just smiled and picked up one specific egg from the back of the display, where it had been half hidden behind larger, more colorful specimens. The egg was about the size of Lily's two fists pressed together, with a shell that swirled between deep purple and bright silver, catching the light in ways that seemed physically impossible. And when Kira placed it in Lily's hands, it was warm, like it had been sitting in sunlight even though the stall was shaded by a massive tree canopy. Kira told her that this dragon had already chosen her, which Lily thought was ridiculous because she had never been to this planet before and had certainly never met any dragons. But the egg pulsed warmly against her palms and she felt something shift inside it, like whatever was growing in there had just recognized her presence. Lily asked how much, and Kira named a price that was steep, but not impossible, and then added that refusing a dragon's choice was considered terrible luck, worse than flying through an asteroid field with your navigation systems offline, worse than angering a trade guild, worse than breaking a contract with the mining cartels. Lily had never considered herself superstitious, but there was something about the way Kira said it with complete seriousness that made her reach for her credit chip before her brain caught up with what she was doing. As Kira wrapped the egg carefully in thermal cloth that would maintain its temperature, she explained that the dragon would hatch when it felt safe and ready, that it would need protein and warmth and patience, and that once bonded, the dragon would be loyal beyond measure, protective beyond reason, and occasionally annoying beyond belief. Lily took the wrapped egg and asked what she was supposed to feed a baby dragon, and Kira laughed and said that dragons were surprisingly adaptable, and that this one would let Lily know what it needed, probably by knocking things off tables until Lily paid attention. Walking back to her ship with the warm egg tucked under her arm, Lily felt like she had just made either the best or worst decision of her life, and she would not know which until the thing actually hatched, assuming it was even real. and not just some elaborate prank that elves played on gullible human traders. The wandering star was exactly where she had left it at the edge of the landing field, looking small and worn, next to the elegant elven vessels that seemed to be grown rather than built, and Lily climbed aboard feeling the familiar hum of her ship systems like coming home after a long day. She placed the egg in the co-pilot seat mostly because she had nowhere else to put it and started the launch sequence while running through her mental checklist of the 17 different things that could go wrong during takeoff on a good day. As the wandering star lifted off and cleared the forest canopy, Lily glanced at the egg sitting peacefully in the seat next to her and muttered that if this thing hatched and turned out to be some kind of trouble, she was going to have strong words with Kira next time she passed through Valendra Prime. The egg pulsed with warm light as if it had heard her and found the threat amusing, and Lily shook her head and focused on plotting her course to the next delivery, wondering what exactly she had gotten herself into and whether her insurance covered dragon-related damages. 3 days into her solo run toward the outer colonies, Lily was beginning to think the egg was just an expensive decoration because it sat peacefully in the co-pilot seat, doing absolutely nothing except occasionally glowing brighter when the ship passed through certain types of radiation fields, which was mildly interesting, but not exactly worth the small fortune she had paid. She had set up a makeshift nest using her spare thermal blanket and had moved the egg from the co-pilot seat to a storage container near the environmental controls where it would stay warm, and she could check on it between navigation adjustments and system maintenance on the 3rd night cycle. Lily was woken from a restless sleep by a sound. She could not immediately identify a sort of tapping, scratching noise that seemed to be coming from the direction of the storage area, where she had left the egg. She pulled herself out of her bunk and stumbled through the narrow corridor of her ship following the sound and discovered that the egg was rocking back and forth in its thermal blanket nest, while hairline cracks spread across its surface like lightning. Made solid, Lily stood there in her sleep clothes with her hair sticking up in 6 directions, wondering if she was supposed to do something to help or if interfering with a hatching dragon was the kind of mistake that got mentioned in cautionary tales told to young spacers. She decided to just watch, and within minutes, the cracks widened, and a small triangular head pushed through the shell, followed by wings that looked far too delicate and transparent to ever support actual flight. The dragon that emerged was about the size of Lily's palm, covered in scales that shifted between purple and silver depending on how the light hit them, and it had eyes that were far too intelligent and aware for something that had literally just entered the world. It looked directly at Lily and made a small chirping sound that somehow conveyed both greeting and demand, as if it was saying, "Hello, I am here now, and I expect you to figure out what I need immediately." Lily reached out slowly, half expecting the tiny dragon to bite her, but instead it climbed onto her hand with surprising coordination for something that was maybe 5 minutes old and settled into her palm, like it had always belonged there. She carried the dragon back to her quarters, trying to remember what Kira had said about feeding and care, but mostly just watching in amazement as the creature stretched its wings and yawned, showing tiny needle-sharp teeth. After some experimentation, Lily discovered that the dragon would eat small pieces of the protein bars she kept for emergency rations, and that it seemed to prefer water at room temperature, and that it absolutely refused to be put down. Once it had decided Lily was its personal mobile perch by the end of the first day, the dragon had claimed the co-pilot seat as its territory, had learned to climb up Lily's arm to sit on her shoulder while she worked, and had developed a habit of chirping loudly whenever Lily tried to close the bathroom door for privacy. Lily named her Zephyr after the old Earth word for a gentle wind, because the dragon seemed to enjoy sitting near the air circulation vents and spreading her wings to catch the breeze, though she was beginning to suspect there was nothing gentle about this particular creature. Within 3 days, Zephyr had figured out how to open the food storage containers by pressing her snout against the release panel in just the right way, and had started expressing clear opinions about Lily's piloting choices by chirping approval when Lily made smooth course corrections and making disgruntled sounds when the ride got bumpy. The dragon was growing at an alarming rate, going from palm size to approximately the size of a small cat in less than a week, and her wings were developing a beautiful sunset coloring that ranged from deep orange to brilliant pink, depending on her mood. What surprised Lily most was how quickly she adapted to having a companion on her usually solitary runs, because Zephyr was surprisingly good company, even if that company had a tendency to knock datapads off the navigation console when she felt Lily was spending too much time reading reports and not enough time providing attention. The real trouble started when Zephyr discovered the thermal blankets because apparently dragons had very strong opinions about temperature regulation and believed that all soft warm things in the ship were community property. With heavy emphasis on being property of the dragon, Lily woke up one morning to find Zephyr wrapped in her favorite blanket, the one she had brought from home and used on every cold night for the past 5 years, looking absolutely pleased with herself. While Lily shivered in her bunk, when Lily tried to reclaim the blanket, Zephyr made it very clear through a series of chirps, growls, and pointed looks that this was now her blanket, and Lily could use one of the inferior backup blankets if she was cold. Lily gave in because arguing with a dragon, even a small one, seemed like a battle she was destined to lose, and ordered 3 more identical thermal blankets from the next station, thinking that would solve the problem. It did not solve the problem because Zephyr showed zero interest in the new blankets and continued to steal specifically Lily's blanket every single night, as if she could tell the difference and enjoyed the game of theft more than she enjoyed the actual warmth. Despite the blanket situation, Lily found herself growing genuinely attached to the little dragon who would curl up on her lap during long stretches of hyperspace travel, and who seemed to sense when Lily was feeling lonely or stressed and would press her warm, scaly head against Lily's hand in what felt like comfort. One afternoon, while Lily was performing routine maintenance on the navigation array, Zephyr suddenly became agitated, pacing back and forth on the console and making urgent clicking sounds that Lily had not heard before. Lily checked all the ship systems, but everything appeared normal until she noticed a small fluctuation in the environmental sensors, showing a carbon monoxide buildup in the engine compartment that her automated alerts had somehow missed. She immediately sealed off the compartment and activated the emergency scrubbers, while Zephyr watched with what looked like satisfaction, as if she had known there was danger and had successfully communicated it to her seemingly oblivious human. After that incident, Lily stopped thinking of Zephyr as just a pet or even a companion, and started thinking of her as crew, because the dragon had potentially saved both their lives, and had done it without any training or instruction, just pure instinct and bond, as they approached the halfway point of their journey. Lily sat in the pilot's seat with Zephyr curled up on the console between her and the view screen, and admitted out loud that buying that egg had been the best impulsive decision she had ever made, even if it meant she would probably never own a blanket again. Zephyr chirped agreement and knocked a datapad onto the floor, just to remind Lily who was really in charge around here. 2 months after Zephyr hatched, the dragon had grown to roughly the size of a medium dog, and her wingspan barely fit through the corridor doorways of the Wandering Star, which meant she had taken to riding on Lily's shoulders whenever they moved through the ship, creating a situation where Lily had to duck constantly to avoid scraping dragon wings against bulkheads. They had fallen into a comfortable routine where Zephyr would wake Lily up each morning by sitting on her chest and staring at her until she opened her eyes, then would supervise breakfast preparation with the intensity of a quality control inspector, and finally would settle into the co-pilot seat for the day's travel, looking for all the world like she understood every button and display on the control panel. Lily had started talking to Zephyr during the long, boring stretches between destinations, explaining her decisions about course corrections or complaining about difficult clients, and the dragon would tilt her head and make small sounds that felt like responses, even though Lily knew it was probably just her imagination. But sometimes Zephyr would react to things Lily said in ways that seemed far too specific to be coincidence, like the time Lily mentioned being worried about a potentially dangerous delivery run, and Zephyr had immediately gone to the weapon locker and sat in front of it until Lily checked that all the emergency defense systems were functioning. The nickname Cuddle Claws had started as a joke one night when Zephyr had decided that 3 in the morning was the perfect time to demand attention, and had climbed onto Lily's bunk and very carefully placed one clawed foot on Lily's face until she woke up and provided the required petting. Lily had muttered the name half asleep and annoyed, but somehow it stuck, because despite Zephyr's growing size and increasingly impressive appearance with scales that now shimmered like precious metals and wings that caught light like stained glass, she was still fundamentally a creature who believed that cuddling was a mandatory activity, and blanket theft was an art form. Their peaceful routine was interrupted when Lily received a distress call on an emergency frequency that cut through her ship's comm system with the kind of priority override that meant someone was in serious trouble. The message was broken and full of static, but Lily caught enough words to understand that a colony ship carrying thousands of people in cryosleep had suffered catastrophic engine failure in an uncharted system and needed immediate assistance. Lily checked her fuel reserves and her cargo manifest and calculated that she could make it to the coordinates given in the distress call if she skipped her next 2 scheduled stops and ran her engines at maximum efficiency for the entire journey. Zephyr watched from the co-pilot seat, making small, concerned clicking sounds as Lily plotted the new course, and the dragon seemed to understand that this was serious because she stayed quiet and still, instead of her usual habit of trying to help by pressing buttons with her snout. The jump to hyperspace was rough because Lily was pushing her ship harder than recommended, and the wandering star rattled and groaned in protest but held together through a combination of good maintenance and what Lily suspected was pure stubbornness. They emerged from hyperspace in a system that had 3 dying stars and a scattered asteroid field, and in the middle of it all was the colony ship looking like a massive wounded whale, drifting without power. Lily opened a communication channel and identified herself and offered assistance, but there was no response from the colony ship, which was strange, because even with main power down, the emergency system should have been active. She moved the wandering star closer, running detailed scans, and what she found made her stomach drop, because the colony ship showed signs of weapons fire recent damage that had torn through hull plating and disabled not just the engines but also most of the ship's defensive systems. Zephyr suddenly became extremely agitated, launching herself off the co-pilot seat and flying directly to the sensor display where she started pawing at a specific section of the star map with increasing urgency. Lily looked at where the dragon was pointing and felt cold fear wash over her, because there were 3 ships decloaking right at the edge of her sensor range, and they were not broadcasting any identification, which in this part of space usually meant pirates or worse. The ships were smaller than the colony vessel, but much larger than the wandering star, and they were moving into attack formation with the kind of precision that suggested military training or at least very experienced raiders. Lily knew she should run because her small cargo runner was no match for 3 armed vessels, but the colony ship had 5,000 people aboard, and if she left them, they would either suffocate when their life support failed or become victims of whoever had attacked them in the first place. She activated her emergency beacon, broadcasting a distress call on all frequencies, hoping that someone else in the system would respond. Then she began plotting an evasive course that would keep her between the attacking ships and the helpless colony vessel. Zephyr made a sound that was half chirp and half growl, and suddenly her scales began glowing with an internal light that Lily had never seen before, and the temperature in the cabin rose noticeably as if the dragon was building up energy for something. The first attacking ship fired, and Lily threw the wandering star into a spiral dive that would have been impossible for a larger vessel. But her small ship responded instantly, and the weapons fire passed through empty space where they had been seconds before. Zephyr opened her mouth and released something that looked like a pulse of concentrated light, and Lily actually saw it on her sensor display as it struck the nearest attacking ship and caused their targeting systems to glitch and reset. Buying precious seconds, Lily stared at her dragon with a mixture of shock and gratitude because apparently bonded dragons could do things that definitely had not been mentioned in Kira's sales pitch back on Valendra Prime. The second and third ships adjusted their approach, trying to flank the wandering star, but Zephyr seemed to sense their intentions before they even completed their maneuvers and would indicate which direction Lily should dodge by looking pointedly at specific parts of the viewscreen. It was the strangest combat experience of Lily's life, flying in desperate patterns, while a dragon acted as an early warning system and occasionally disrupted enemy targeting with bursts of energy that seemed to come from nowhere. The attacking ships were clearly confused because they had expected an easy target, and instead were dealing with a cargo runner that flew like a fighter and seemed to know their moves before they made them. Lily kept checking her chronometer, counting down the minutes until hopefully someone responded to her distress beacon, because she knew she could not keep this up forever. Her ship was taking hits despite her best efforts, and several systems were already showing damage warnings. Zephyr made another urgent clicking sound and pressed her snout against a specific panel, and Lily looked at the navigation display and saw what the dragon had noticed: a debris field from the asteroid belt that she could use for cover if she could just survive long enough to reach it. She pushed her engines to maximum and aimed for the densest part of the field, while the attacking ships followed, firing continuously, and Lily whispered a promise to Zephyr that if they survived this, she would never complain about blanket theft again. The wandering star dove into the asteroid field with 3 attack ships close behind, and Lily was flying on pure instinct, now letting her hands move across the controls, while Zephyr called out warnings through chirps and clicks that somehow Lily had learned to understand as clearly as spoken words. When Zephyr made a sharp rising sound, Lily pulled up, and a massive asteroid tumbled through the space where they would have been. And when the dragon made a low rumbling noise, Lily cut power and let momentum carry them through a narrow gap between 2 spinning rocks that the pursuing ships were too large to follow. The attacking vessels split up, trying to circle around the asteroid field and cut off any escape routes. But Lily was not trying to escape. She was trying to survive long enough for help to arrive. And the chaotic tumbling rocks were the best protection she had. One of the attack ships made the mistake of following too closely into the field and clipped an asteroid, with its port side sending it spinning out of control until it collided with a larger rock and exploded in a brief bright flash that lit up the surrounding debris. The remaining 2 ships became more cautious, holding position at the edge of the field and firing long-range shots that Lily could see coming and dodge, but she knew this stalemate could not last, because eventually they would get lucky, or she would make a mistake, or her fuel would run low. Zephyr was glowing brightly now, her scales pulsing with light and rhythm with her breathing, and Lily realized the dragon was tired, because whatever energy she had been using to disrupt the enemy targeting systems was taking a toll on her small body. Lily reached over and gently stroked Zephyr's head, whispering that she had done amazingly and could rest now, that Lily would handle things from here, even though she had no idea how she was actually going to handle things. The dragon made a stubborn chirping sound that clearly meant she was not giving up, and pressed her nose against the sensor display again, this time pointing at something new. A massive asteroid at the center of the field that had a hollow interior showing on the scans, like a natural cave. Lily understood immediately and aimed for the hollow asteroid, pushing through the debris field with desperate speed, while the attack ships realized what she was doing and tried to intercept, but they were too far away and too cautious about entering the dense part of the field. The wandering star slipped into the hollow asteroid, and Lily immediately cut all non-essential power, making her ship as invisible as possible to sensors, while she waited in the darkness with only emergency lighting and the soft glow from Zephyr's scales providing any visibility. Minutes passed, feeling like hours, and Lily watched her sensor display showing the 2 attack ships circling the asteroid field, clearly trying to decide if it was worth the risk to come in after her, or if they should just wait for her to run out of air or power and be forced to emerge. Zephyr had curled up in Lily's lap, exhausted from the sustained use of her abilities, and Lily held her gently, feeling the dragon's rapid heartbeat against her hands, and promising silently that she would find a way to get them both out of this alive. Then her comm system crackled to life with a new signal, and Lily nearly cried with relief when she heard the identification codes of a rescue fleet responding to her distress beacon, asking for her current position and status. Lily transmitted her coordinates and a quick summary of the situation, including the attack ships and the disabled colony vessel, and warned that the attackers were likely to flee or fight when reinforcements arrived. The rescue fleet arrived in a show of force that made the attack ship's decision easy. They broke off immediately and jumped to hyperspace, leaving the damaged colony ship, the hidden wandering star, and the approaching rescue vessels alone in the system. Lily waited another few minutes to be certain the attackers were really gone, then powered up her ship and emerged from the hollow asteroid, feeling like she had aged 10 years in the past hour. The rescue fleet was a mixed group of military escorts and civilian repair vessels, and they immediately began work on the colony ship. While their commander hailed Lily, asking for a full report on what had happened, Lily explained everything from the distress call to the ambush to the desperate chase through the asteroid field. And when she mentioned that her small cargo runner had managed to hold off 3 military-grade attack vessels for over 20 minutes, there was a long silence on the other end of the comm. Finally, the commander asked the question that Lily had been dreading. How exactly had a solo cargo hauler managed that level of defensive flying and combat effectiveness? Lily looked down at Zephyr, who was awake now and looking up at her with those intelligent eyes, and she made a decision to tell the truth because these people deserved to know what had saved them. She told them about the dragon, about the bond, about the early warning system and the targeting disruption, and the way Zephyr seemed to sense danger before it arrived, and there was another long silence before the commander laughed and said, "That was the most ridiculous and simultaneously most believable thing he had heard all year." The colony ship captain came on, the comnex thanking Lily profusely and asking if there was anything they could do to repay her for risking her life to protect 5,000 sleeping colonists. Lily said they could start by explaining why someone had attacked them in the first place, because colony ships were supposed to be protected by about 6 different interstellar treaties, and anyone who fired on one was going to have multiple governments hunting them. The captain explained that they were carrying not just colonists, but also several tons of rare minerals that had been discovered in their departure system, and apparently someone had decided that stealing the cargo was worth breaking every law about attacking civilian vessels. The rescue fleet had already sent their IDs and sensor logs to the nearest military outpost, and there would definitely be an investigation, but that did not help the immediate problem of the colony ship being severely damaged, and stranded Lily spent the next several hours helping coordinate repairs using her small ship systems to transport engineers and equipment between vessels, while Zephyr supervised from the co-pilot seat, occasionally making suggestions by pointing at things with her snout. By the time the colony ship was stable enough to limp to the nearest station under escort from the military vessels, everyone involved was exhausted but alive, and the captain offered Lily a substantial reward, plus a permanent contract if she ever wanted to work as a dedicated escort for colony runs. Lily politely declined the permanent contract because she valued her independence, but accepted the reward, which was enough to repair all the damage her ship had taken during the fight and upgrade several systems that had been barely functional. As the rescue fleet prepared to depart, the commander sent one final message telling Lily that what she had done was incredibly brave and incredibly stupid, and that her dragon was apparently worth more than every weapon system on his entire fleet combined. Lily signed off and set course for the nearest station where she could make repairs and file her official report, and maybe figure out what exactly Zephyr was capable of, because today had revealed abilities that definitely went beyond anything a normal pet should possess. Zephyr chirped softly and settled into the co-pilot seat, looking proud of herself, and Lily smiled and said that she supposed the dragon had earned the right to steal blankets for the rest of her life after saving both their lives multiple times in one day. The repair station was a massive orbital platform that serviced everything from small personal craft to commercial haulers, and Lily docked the Wandering Star in a repair bay while trying not to think about how much the damage assessment was going to cost. Even with the reward money from the colony ship, Rescue Zephyr attracted immediate attention from the station workers, because apparently dragons were rare enough that most people had never seen one in person, and the sight of a meter-long creature with sunset-colored wings riding on Lily's shoulder caused work to stop in several sections as people came over to stare. One particularly bold mechanic asked if he could touch Zephyr, and the dragon fixed him with a look that clearly communicated that touching was not permitted and would result in consequences, before tucking her head against Lily's neck in a way that said she belonged to this human, and everyone else should back off. The station manager was a woman named Claire, who had been running the repair facility for 20 years and claimed she had seen everything the galaxy could throw at a spaceship, but even she looked impressed when she reviewed the damage report and realized the Wandering Star had survived a fight with military-grade attack vessels. Claire quoted a repair timeline of 3 days and a cost that made Lily wince but was actually reasonable given the extent of the damage, and she threw in free upgrades to the shield generators and targeting systems, saying that any ship brave enough or crazy enough to protect a colony vessel deserved better defensive capabilities. With her ship in capable hands, Lily checked into station housing, which was basically a small room with a bed, a desk, and a window looking out at the stars, and Zephyr immediately claimed the bed as her territory by sprawling across it in a way that suggested Lily would be sleeping on the floor. Lily was too tired to argue and simply pushed the dragon over enough to make room for herself and collapsed into sleep, still wearing her flight suit and boots. She woke up hours later to find Zephyr curled against her side, radiating warmth like a living heater and purring in a way that made Lily's chest vibrate, and for a moment, Lily just lay there feeling grateful that they had both survived and that she had decided to buy that expensive glowing egg on Valendra Prime. Over the next 2 days while her ship was being repaired, Lily found herself fielding questions from other pilots and traders who had heard about the colony ship rescue and wanted to know if the stories were true. She confirmed that yes, she had fought off 3 attack ships, and yes, her dragon had helped, and no, she did not fully understand how Zephyr's abilities worked, but was planning to contact Kira back on Valendra Prime to ask some very specific questions about what exactly bonded dragons were capable of. Several people offered to buy Zephyr for amounts of money that would have let Lily retire comfortably, and she turned them all down without even considering it, because the dragon was not property and was definitely not for sale at any price. On the 3rd day, Lily received a message from an official government channel requesting a meeting to discuss her encounter with the attack ships and her role in protecting the colony vessel, and she showed up at the designated conference room with Zephyr on her shoulder, wondering if she was in trouble. The meeting turned out to be more of a debriefing than an interrogation, and the officials were primarily interested in getting her detailed account of the attack ship's capabilities and tactics so they could track down whoever was behind the ambush. They also wanted to know about Zephyr, specifically about the targeting disruption ability, and whether Lily thought dragons could be trained for military or security applications. Lily said firmly that she had no interest in turning her dragon into a weapon, and that as far as she understood, dragon bonding worked on mutual choice, not forced conscription, but she did provide technical details about what she had observed during the fight. The officials thanked her for her cooperation and informed her that the colony ship had arrived safely at its destination, and the families of the 5,000 sleeping colonists wanted to formally thank her, but understood if she preferred to remain anonymous. Lily chose to remain anonymous because she had never been comfortable with attention or praise, and because she suspected that being known as the cargo hauler, who had fought off military attack ships, might attract the wrong kind of interest from people who would either want to hire her for dangerous jobs or eliminate her as a potential witness. When the Wandering Star was finally repaired and ready to fly again, Lily stood in the docking bay with Claire going over the upgrade documentation and feeling genuinely impressed by the work that had been done. Her ship looked almost new with fresh hull plating, where the old damaged sections had been replaced, and enhanced shield generators that would hopefully mean she could avoid, rather than survive, the next combat situation. Claire handed over the final bill, which was substantially lower than the original quote, and when Lily asked why she got a discount, Claire just smiled and said that heroes did not pay full price at her station. Lily wanted to argue that she was not a hero, just a cargo hauler who had been in the wrong place at the right time, but Claire waved off her protests and said that motivation did not matter, when the result was 5,000 lives saved. Before leaving the station, Lily sent a long, detailed message to Kira on Valendra Prime describing everything that had happened with Zephyr and asking for information about dragon abilities, bonding mechanics, and whether there was some kind of manual or guide she should have been given. Along with the egg, Kira's response arrived 3 days later while Lily was in transit to her next delivery, and it was surprisingly comprehensive, explaining that bonded dragons developed abilities based on their chosen partner's needs, and that Zephyr's protective instincts and danger sensing had manifested because Lily lived a dangerous life in deep space. Kira also mentioned that the bond would continue to strengthen over time, and Zephyr would likely develop additional abilities as she grew, and that the targeting disruption was actually a fairly rare gift that suggested the dragon had remarkable power potential. The message ended with Kira saying that she was glad the dragon had chosen well, and that Lily should trust Zephyr's instincts because bonded dragons had been known to sense danger weeks in advance and had saved countless lives throughout elven history. Lily read the message twice, then looked at Zephyr, who was currently trying to figure out how to open a storage container that contained Lily's private stash of chocolate, and she laughed because it was hard to take seriously the idea that this blanket-stealing, snack-obsessed creature was some kind of mystical guardian. But then Zephyr looked up at her with those intelligent eyes and made a soft chirping sound, and Lily remembered the asteroid field and the way the dragon had guided her through impossible maneuvers, and she thought maybe mystical guardians came in unexpected packages. That night Lily settled into her bunk and was not at all surprised when Zephyr immediately stole her thermal blanket and wrapped herself in it, looking absolutely pleased with her theft. Lily grabbed one of the backup blankets and crawled under it, but before she could get comfortable, Zephyr shifted and deliberately extended one wing over Lily like a living blanket that radiated warmth and security. It was the first time the dragon had willingly shared instead of just taking, and Lily reached up to gently scratch under Zephyr's chin and whispered, "Thank you for everything, for the warnings and the protection and the company, and even for the blanket theft, because it meant she was never really alone out here in the vast darkness of space." Zephyr purred and settled more firmly against Lily's side, and as Lily drifted off to sleep, she thought about how strange and wonderful it was that her life had been completely changed by an impulsive purchase in an alien market, and that her best friend and most trusted crew member was a dragon who believed that every blanket in the universe was hers by right. The wandering star continued on through the night cycles, carrying its unusual crew toward whatever adventures waited among the stars.